Good evening. My name is Michael Redmond. I'm the principal of Thurston Middle School. Welcome to the 5th grade parent night. I'm very excited to be back into this room with all of you because for the past few years I haven't been able to do this, and it's been under a tent or in Zoom, and so this is very exciting, and I'm happy to welcome you all into Thurston Middle School. Before I introduce the folks who are here tonight, because we've expanded a little bit of our presentation. I promise I'm going to try to get everyone out of here within an hour to an hour and a half. But I start tonight with you doing some of the work, which models what we hope students do when they come into our classes here. So what I'd ask you all to do right now is to turn and talk to someone next to you about a middle school experience that you remember having. And you're all talking before I could finish the directions. This is not good. So I just want to remind you that this is being recorded tonight. But I will ask you to share, and I will wait until people do share. And then after we hear some things, we will take some time to also share and embarrass ourselves a little bit. So turn and talk to someone next to you. Introduce yourselves if you don't know each other. Share a middle school experience and that you remember, good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. And then I'll bring you all back together to share some of those out. Okay, who wants to go first? What do you remember about your middle school experience? Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Lauren Watson. When I was in 7th grade, I was new to my school, and I constructed a really carefully designed outfit to wear to the dance. And when I got there, a bunch of kids walked up to me and asked why I was wearing a costume. It's a costume. It's just my outfit.
Okay. So an awkward social interaction that sounds pretty negative, but something you survived. Okay, real thing. Others? I'm going to wait for about 10. I'm going to be really honest. So I told you I'd keep it to an hour, hour and a half, but it really depends on your participation. Okay.
I remember passing notes to my friends in the hallway.
Okay.
Before we had phones, that was how we communicated.
Okay. So relationships and social interactions. Okay.
And having a notebook that was only notes to my friends that we passed to each other, and we wrote in it what it looked like in the school book.
Okay. Okay. Ways to communicate, social interactions, relationships. Hopefully there were nice things about your teachers and your classmates.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, good answer. That's 3. Something you remember about your middle school experience.
Another terrible social interaction. My friends told me that they didn't want to eat lunch with me anymore, and I had to eat in the bathroom.
Okay. Okay. Social interactions, relationships, communication. Others? Yes?
Forgetting my locked combination over and over.
Okay. For organizational skills. Okay.
Like, no one's mentioned orthodontia, which was a real big part of my life.
Don't worry. We're about ready to get to something that shows that, I think. A couple more. Yes.
Just boys notice girls and girls notice boys.
Uh-huh. Yep. That begins. Yes, it does. So puberty, body changing, lots of things. Yes?
First detention.
My first and only detention as a 6th grader, a 7th grader, an 8th grader.
7th.
Okay. Couple more? They could be good things too. Come on.
Our assistant principal used to call up everyone at lunchtime who had detention that day. So you'd sit there, everyone was there, and like tap on the mic and then call everyone one by one.
Oh,
Your attention, your attention.
were you one of them?
Not regularly.
Oh. So the yes. Okay. Okay. Maybe like two more. Yes.
I met my wife in this very building, and right at the front of our invitation was a Castle in the Clouds dance, which happened on the other side of this wall.
Okay. But still relationships, communication, puberty. Okay. Okay. One or two more.
I think there was a field trip to Washington.
Okay. So an overnight trip of some kind. So bonding and, again, relationships. Okay. So yes?
I wanted to be one of my teachers, and I would practice in front of the mirror conducting like her.
Okay.
So that probably inspired me to be a music teacher.
All right. So, but also like clubs or activities or some exploratories or something like that. So I think it's always important to start with this and acknowledge that there are memories that we have that are negative, but also memories that we have that are positive. But it's also just a complicated time and one that we all survive. So like I said, it's now our turn. So, oh, wrong way. So let me introduce you to the administrators at Thurston Middle School. So again, Mike Redmond, principal. It's my 8th grade photo. There's a few things that I remember. I had a very positive middle school experience. I was the school council president. I was the safety patrol captain, so I had this cool orange belt with a gold badge. I remember having lots of girlfriends. I was super into sports and music. I still am. I remember the relationships that I formulated with my teachers. And specifically, I had a teacher in 8th grade who was my math teacher. And her name was Miss DeCosmo. We called her Miss D. And I remember she had a thing on her board that was really specifically for me. And it was the Anthony Watch. And her brother was a football player at BC. He was a wide receiver, and she knew I wanted to play hockey at BC. That dream never came true. But she knew that that was something that was really important to me and a connection that she could make with me. And so every time there was a football game that Anthony was going to be playing on that was on national TV, the Anthony Watch was on the board, and she was eager to tell me about it. And I was eager to talk to her about my visit to BC when I was in maybe middle school. I went when I was like in 7th grade. So I had a really positive middle school experience. I had a small middle school. How many of you in the room went to middle school where middle school was 5th through 8th grade? How many of you went to middle school where it was 6th through 8th grade? 7th and 8th grade only? 7 through 12. Okay. So there's very big differences between the structures of middle schools and junior high schools. And mine was a traditional middle school. It was actually K to 8, so I didn't have a traditional 6 to 8 middle school. But we've all had different kinds of periods in time where we experience those memories in these different environments. And at Thurston, we're 6 through 8. So we really find that to be a true middle school. It's not a junior high. And that drives a lot of what you're going to hear tonight, because it's a bridge from elementary to high school. Okay? So I'm going to introduce Nicole Haberman, who was just talking about her. We both had braces. We've reminisced about how we had them for a very long time. But Nicole Haberman's the assistant principal. And would you like to share your memory?
Yes. So, ready to hold on to the mic so I'm on? Yeah. Hello, everybody. Yes, I didn't have quite as stellar of a middle school experience, no orange safety belt, none of that. But I do recall the many, sort of transformations of orthodontia that I had to suffer through. And I was really proud of my bangs. I don't know if any of you 90s kids remember the bangs. They were very important. And I'm I am excited to be here tonight. It's my first fifth grade parent night. I have spent most of my career working in the high schools. And many of you might have some of the older kids that saw me there up at WHS for the 6 years that I was there prior to coming here. And I'm excited about the middle school group. This is a really fun group. I'm excited to stay here and to see the transitions. And I'm excited to talk to you tonight about all of the wonderful things that we have on offer. It's a really special place. You know, your kid might even meet their future spouse here. Who knows? And so I think I'm happy to be part of this team. We're happy to welcome Ed Walker, who is joining us. He's here tonight. He will be starting his career as the inaugural Dean of Students here at Thurston, and I will allow him a chance to say hello as well.
Do I need this?
You do, because we're being recorded.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Edward Walker. I go by Edward or Ed. Please do not call me Eddie. I'm excited to be here for a number of different reasons, and just to stick with the protocol, I'll talk about my two memories from middle school. It's my entry to middle school and my exit from middle school. So I was a new kid on the block in Pembroke, Georgia, and I was going into the middle school that began in 5th grade, and I can remember walking into the gymnasium, much like this, but the gymnasium was much, much bigger. All the 5th graders over here, 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders in this gym, and I was walking into this gym alone, terrified. And I walked into the gym, and it went from rah to dead silence, staring at the kid in the doorway. And I was the new kid on the block, and everyone was wondering, who is this new kid? I can remember being petrified of taking another step, moving forward, and then someone sitting on the bleachers said, "Come on, sit right here." I remember that vividly. And I'm going to share my my exit memory, and then you can make all of the assumptions you want about this memory. But I can remember the day that I was graduating, and we have this huge ceremony for rewards, and I received the Most Improved Student Award. So think about what you have to do to receive the Most Improved Student Award. And it was a great feeling, but the greatest memory was that was the first time I can remember my mother sitting in the audience and being proud. She was crying again, but she was proud this time. And so those are my two memories. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to working with you and your students and being in this community in general. And I thought coming into this auditorium tonight was going to be like middle school, the newness of it. But then I remembered you are also new to the middle school. And so I am excited because I am new to Thurston Middle School. So we will be beginning this journey together. And I'm looking forward to every opportunity to talk to you, work with you, etc. Thank you.
So I'll introduce the other folks here tonight, and I'll ask afterwards that if they would like to share a middle school memory, they can, but I won't put them on the spot. We have Steve Ouellette, our Director of Technology, Learning, and Integration. What I'll share about Steve's picture, though, which is quite a story, is he's shooting hoops in the old garden for a free throw contest, and he's trying to win a stereo. He didn't follow the facial shot protocol, but I told him it was cool because you could see all the lanky, awkward body kind of a middle schooler, which I remember experiencing. I'm sure you do too. We have Dee Gratian, our Student Services Department Head. Katie Clark, Math and Science Department Head. Catherine Stewart, she is the Humanities, that's ELA and Social Studies Department Head. We have Abby Kalman, our Red Team Leader, and Lisa Yetman, our Blue Team Leader. And Jesse Murphy will be popping on the Zoom with us in a few minutes, and he is our Instructional Technology Coach. So everyone who's here tonight is going to share a little bit of information about our program, about our school, and so let's get into that a little bit. Oh, do any of you want to share anything? No? Okay. We covered it, I think. Okay. All right. So, when we think about middle school, we think about middle school development. These are some of the questions that we ask. But as you know, as a district, we have done a lot of work with social emotional learning, and we really root ourselves in the CASEL framework. This is an image of the CASEL framework. So we really think about the skills that we want students to learn, such as self-management, self-awareness, all of the big ones in the middle there. And we're really working on that through middle school. This is a a critical developmental time where, yes, kids are going to make mistakes. Yes, they're going to experiment with friendships. You're all coming from 5 different elementary schools. We know that. And our goal is to really educate students through that. Unfortunately, yes, there's going to be times where you hear from Mrs. Haberman or Mr. Walker or myself regarding some disciplinary things, and we'll talk about that. But ultimately, our goal is to partner with you and to come up with a solution, some sort of educational component that's associated with when things go wrong. But we also take a very proactive approach to that. And we have our schedule built to specifically do that in our advisory model. So I want to talk a little bit about our schedule. Our schedule is brand new. About 4 years ago when I started at Thurston and I took the position here, my first task was to spend a year doing an entry plan. And there are some folks in the room who are parents of other middle schoolers who were part of that process, who I spent time with interviewing. I interviewed all the students, a lot of student groups, a lot of teachers. When I transitioned to Thurston, I did shadow a student for the day. So I walked around with a 6th grader all day long and experienced what that life was like. And one thing that was really ironic and it triggered me through the whole process was that my wife attended Thurston Middle School. And so when I went home, I talked about that experience. And what she said to me is like, oh, I remember that. Oh, that schedule's the same. And I looked at her and I was like, how is that possible? And she was like finishing my sentences on the day that I had, even the activities that I was doing in some classes. And I was like, okay, we all know that there's been a lot of research done, a lot that's happened in middle school development. I was a principal in Vermont for 4 years in a middle school before I came to Thurston. And I knew from talking to the staff that they were eager to change the schedule. And so we did a tremendous amount of work throughout the pandemic of experimentation and using that time to experiment with different versions of class times and structures. And then towards the end of the year, midpoint to the end of the year, we spent a lot of time developing this new schedule. So every day, students across our whole building in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they have a 20-minute advisory. Our advisory has a purpose, which is to work on relationship skills, focus on those SEL skills that we had up on the board before. It looks very similar to what students do in morning meeting or open circle in the elementary school. Yes, we take attendance there, but we also do something which I call the circle of power and respect, which comes from developmental design. We have a greeting where we sit in a circle, we have a greeting, we do a share of some kind, we have an activity that happens, and then we give some news and announcements for the day. We have three teams of advisory coordinators that develop the curriculum for that, and they work really closely to make sure all students are having a similar experience. We've had advisory prior to this schedule, but it just wasn't at that level. And I'm happy to say that this year it's been at that level, and the teachers and staff are doing a really great job with that. Then we go into 3 core academic classes, and I'll explain a little bit about that in a second because we have a rotating schedule. Something that the students talked to me a lot about was the fact that the previous schedule was very stagnant. What you had block 1 every day was that way for the entire year. What you had the last block of the day was what you had for the entire year. So if you didn't like math, and that was the way you ended your day every day, did you really want to come back to school the next day? Probably not. So our schedule now rotates, so students have classes at different times during the day, and that helps keep things fresh, change it up, and keep their attention a little bit different each day. We put into the schedule WIN, which is a what I need block. This is a time of the day where students are really focusing on skill work. There's a little bit to no homework time there, but there's some. There's no homework time in the high school schedule during their day. So we really try to prepare students for that. This time of the day has become critical for us because we know what has happened over the pandemic, and we need students to focus on catching up or having some enrichment. And so we use that time by looking at our data and developing interventions and enrichment for our students. Students have a 30-minute lunch. most of the year, we'll go out about 15 to 20 minutes into lunch. We go outside for a recess of about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we end our day in exploratories. So it's being recorded. Okay, I know this is going to be like, whoa, it's being recorded. We'll post the PowerPoint presentation to our website. But this is an example of a student schedule. So it's a 10-day rotation. It's a 10-day cycle. However, it's really just a 5-day with a slight change. So each day, students have the A is the advisory block, B, C and D, E and F. Those are your core classes. Those are your classes that you rotate through, and I'll explain what the program of studies is in a second. But students rotate those throughout the day. Then they have their win block every day with a common teacher, their lunch block, and then their exploratories is really what makes it a 10. So every other day, students will either have one of our exploratories for the entire 85 minutes, because we have one exploratory roughly every 30 days, and on the other day, they have a music and PE. So that's why it's 10, because it has to be 5 and 5 of each of those. So it's this part always stays the same. It's really this that kind of changes after 5, okay? So how that translates, just so you can see it a little differently, this is what the blocks look like. That's how it translates to your schedules. So I just took a day 1 and day 2, so you can see how those relate. Again, we split that exploratory time, which is 85 minutes, into 2 exploratories on one day or 1 on the other. So at TMS, we have a team structure. So both of our 6th grade teams are located in separate parts in our building. Our building is like a weird U-L-Y kind of shape. When you come to visit and walk the schedules, it'll be very easy for you to find where you're going, because we'll tell you where you're going if you're red team or where you're going if you're blue team. Always a lot of questions about teaming. We take a lot of input from 5th grade teachers. We try to mix it up so there's a balance from each school when we get into teaming. Teaming, if you're on the red team, you're not necessarily on the red team every single year. We change it up every year, the teams. So don't worry if you're on the red team this year, you may be on the blue team next year, or you may again be on the red team. Some kids get red every year, some kids get blue, some kids get a mix. So the team structure, it consists of an ELA teacher, a math teacher, a science, social studies, and special education teacher. That's consistent on both teams. They have one guidance counselor, that's Miss Yim. And Miss Yim rotates with them for all 3 years. So she will be your children's guidance counselor for all 3 years. So she's someone that stays consistent. 3 years ago, we implemented and added another guidance counselor to Thurston as part of my entry plan, so that the guidance counselors stick with each cohort of students and rotate with them. I'm seeing someone nod, saying that I remember that decision, and her children have gone through that. So it's been really a great support, someone who your children get to know, and someone who gets to help the teachers in the next year get a jump start on who the students are. As part of the core team structure, students have case and health. It's a half a year class, and each teacher spends half of the year with each team. So we'll talk a little bit about what case stands for and what health stands for in a minute. And that minute's coming up now. So I'm going to ask Catherine Stewart to just give you a quick overview of what 6th grade ELA and social studies looks like. And then I'll have Katie Clark do the math and science, and then we'll get into some of the half-year classes and exploratories. Catherine.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'll start by treating you to my own middle school experience. So I was thinking about how, not unlike Westwood in my town, our middle school was fed by many different elementary schools. And for a quiet, shy, stick-to-herself kid, I had gotten so comfortable and so familiar with my tiny cohort. And then to enter this new building and have all these kids from all these different schools, the experience was really terrifying. And one of the things that I struggled with was just navigating all of those social relationships and the friend dynamics and putting yourself out there and meeting new people and getting hurt, but making really good friends. And so I'm here to say that I survived those years and came out the other side. And I want to share that with you in case you also have a shy, quiet, stick-to-their-self kind of kid. They're going to find a place here. I'm the Humanities Department Chair. I'll talk a little bit about Social Studies and ELA for our 6th grade students. Social Studies 6th grade is the first of a 2-year sequence where students study ancient civilizations. Students study the essential question, how does the study of our shared history help us better understand our world today? They begin by studying the work of archaeologists. How do we learn about the past? How do we look at signs that our ancestors have left behind to try to make sense of the ancient world? And then they do a geographical study of various regions of the world and the people who lived there. In 6th grade ELA, students explore the question, who am I as a reader and a writer? We have a really comprehensive independent reading program that's woven throughout our 6th grade classes, and students also have the opportunity to do a real solid foundation with their writing skills. They practice essay writing, paragraph writing, they get experience with narrative writing and some self-reflection, all while studying a variety of nonfiction and literature and historical fiction and short stories and poetry. So it's a real rich mix that gives kids the opportunity to think about themselves, their place in the world, and how literature can help them understand that. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Katie Clark.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Clark, and I am the STEM department head here at Thurston. And I had the exact opposite experience as Catherine in middle school. I was the very challenging child that teachers wished they didn't get on their roster. I'm number 4 in line of 4 children, and I was the, the 4th child that challenged authority. So my middle school experience was mostly in the hallway or in Mr. Redmond's office. But in my 7th grade year, my 7th grade English teacher, Mrs. Follett, said to me, "Why are you doing this? Why are you acting out?" And I didn't have a good answer for her. It was just who I had become. And she said to me, if you change your behavior, you're going to change your path. And that really, I remember her saying that, I remember where I was standing, I remember all of that. And she ended up switching all of my classes for the 8th grade year to put me on a different path because she believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself and none of my teachers at the time had ever believed in me. And that changed my path. And that was a huge experience in my middle school years, and that is a major memory that I have, and your children could have a very similar experience if they are the challenging one or the one that, pushes authority or pushes buttons at home. I pushed buttons everywhere I went. Sometimes I still do, but so that's my middle school experience. In 6th grade at Thurston, the students in math and science in science, we have 3 different topics or units of study. And they are life science, physical science, and earth science. So we're very much Common Core, next generation science standards aligned. We follow the Massachusetts Science Standards. And the students will study life science for 1/3 of the year, and that is cells and human body systems. And then they study physical science for 1/3 of the year, and that is light waves and some of Newton's laws and some other force and motion. And then they study earth science, which is mostly the relationship between the earth, sun, and the moon, and beyond, so a little bit of the universe. We are an integrated science program, so we don't just teach one strand the entire year, we teach them all. And all of those strands spiral from 6th, 7th, and 8th. We build off them each year, so that when we filter our students up to the high school, they will then redo and build on all of those courses in their biology, chemistry, physics, and environmental science classes. So it's a very well-structured program, and our teachers work very well together. They're very closely aligned, and they work horizontally and vertically. And in the math program, this is the first time the students are in one full math class, and that this is their math teacher, and this is their math class, and their support staff. And what they do is they explore a variety of math topics. They take 1/4 of the year geometry, 1/4 of the year exponents and equations, 1/4 statistics and probability, and 1/4 ratios and proportions. And those teachers as well are very closely aligned. They are aligned to the Common Core math standards in Massachusetts, and our assessments are very much aligned to what we are doing is preparing our students for taking MCAS, but also preparing our students for a wonderful math career. We also, do you want me to talk about the other two now? Or do you want me to wait till the electives? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
So I'm going to have Mrs. Haberman talk a little bit about our next group of classes. So as I mentioned, students have half a year of health and half a year of CASE. CASE is Culinary Arts Consumer Education. I'm not sure if you know this, but we have a room that is has like 6 cooking stations, and I think it's probably the class that students remember the most because it's where they make food and they get to leave with the food and they eat the food and they bring me food. I know I love it. It's right down the hallway, and it's really set up to be this really unique experience that I don't think many middle schools have, and one that's very memorable. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're also going to talk about the full year classes that meet every other day, PE and music. Students have a choice. If you haven't submitted your child's choice for music selection, please do that, because that's what helps us do the scheduling piece. Students have choice. It came out in our, oh, it's coming. It's coming out, sorry. Oh, okay. Okay, the 7th graders went out, sorry, okay, whoops. Okay, it's coming, So when it comes, make sure you fill it out. Okay. Thanks for keeping me alive. Okay, all right, so it's orchestra, band, chorus, and general music. They meet every other day, like we said, for half of the block. Our orchestra concert was last night. Our chorus concert is tonight. Band is going to Great East with some of the other participants in a couple of weeks. And then finally, we have a rotating arts exploratory model. So students have each of these courses, Art 1, Art 2, Drama 1, Drama 2, Computer Science, Engineering, they have them for approximately 30 days, and then they rotate to the next one. And not all 6th graders have them at the same time. I will also say that for these courses, our students mix teams. So the red and the blue team students mix for these courses. So they're not by team for these. Some parents ask if they'll ever see someone from the other team. This is where it's possible. It's also possible in lunch. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Haberman to just talk a little bit about, we're going to start with Mrs. Clark, actually. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You can do it.
Okay, you can do it. Good.
Great. Yeah, I guess I can talk a little bit about, sort of the electives in general. Before I became an administrator, I was a high school English teacher for many years. And so I have all the love for the core academics, but I also have a sister and a sister-in-law who are art teachers and who do ceramics for a living on the side. And I am married to a software engineer. And a lot of students' lives are changed and shaped by these elective types of courses and experiences that are the place where they can really fall in love with a particular area and have a chance to practice at it and play at it and decide if it's something that they want to commit to when they get to the high school, where they have a very broad array of offerings in each of these disciplines, and they're very specific. So it's a great course offering selection, and I have the honor of being able to speak not necessarily as in depth as those teachers would be able to do if they were here to represent their own departments. But the slides that you're going to see here today were created by those teachers in small groups one day during some of our professional development time, where I said, what are the distilled pieces that you want to communicate to our incoming 6th graders? And they all worked with sort of faces of delight on ways to sort of share out in as brief of a time as possible what they can bring to your child. And so I will have Katie Clark talk a little bit about the computer science and engineering elective, which really falls under her department.
Thank you. So computer science and engineering are a required course that all students take. They take it in 6th, 7th, and 8th, so they take both of them each year. And the reason for that is because these 2 courses are actually assessed on MCAS, and they're very important for student development in life. In computer science, we have 3 amazing 3D printers. And so the students first began working on internet safety and internet literacy and understanding the way the internet works, even though they're coming into 6th grade and probably already know all that stuff. But, and then they learn how to code. And they start coding websites, they start coding commercials, and what they do is they build on that coding experience all 3 years. When they finish their coding project, they start to design items for the 3D printer. So we've had a group of students that in one class designed the white chess pieces, and in another class designed the black chess pieces, and then they played a chess tournament. They played versus each other, and then they played versus the teacher, who's a chess guru, and they design, they'll take a hinge, a door hinge from home, and they recreate it, and it becomes a working hinge that they reprinted on a plastic machine. So they can go way above and beyond, or they can print a dice. They can make a Lego. The teacher in that class allows them to do what they're able to do, what they're comfortable doing, and he meets them where they are. And they love this. And it's all done on Tinkercad, which is a free Google program. So we love this class, the kids love this class, and all kids really thrive in the class, whether or not they thought they were ever going to love coding or computer science or any of that. It's a great opportunity. And then the engineering design class is a fairly new class that we developed a couple years ago. And it's a mixture of the old school wood shop that I fell in love with when I was in 7th grade and technology. So it's really think, design, build, test. They are thinking about real world problems like energy efficient homes or mechanical robotic arms on the Mars rover. And then they're answering a question about a challenge, and then they're designing and developing and testing something. There's power tools, hand tools, saws, graph paper, everything involved. And from you can walk into a 6th grade class and you'll see a tiny little person using a bandsaw. Very safely, very comfortably, under adult guidance with a lot of training. And by the time they get to 8th grade, these kids have carpentry skills. And it's just a wonderful program that they get to take all 3 years that builds on their skills. And this year, it was the first time that I had an 8th grader who had this for 3 years. And this one student, a female student, said, this is what I want to do. I'm going to actually apply to Blue Hills Vocational School because I want to be a carpenter. And for me, that was just an amazing experience because without this program, she might not have ever experienced something like this and found that love of hands-on learning and design and engineering. And so that's really what the beauty of the engineering program does. Plus, it ties in all of the math and science physics standards where we're talking about measurement and equations and formulas. We bring those all together. Those teachers collaborate closely on building off the skills that they're working on in math and science. Thank you.
And as the expert, Katie knows a lot about these individual courses for computer science and engineering. I know far less about the PE courses themselves, but I can tell you that our wellness department is staffed by 4 amazing individuals, Brian Whalen, Ari Tornatori, Will Whittlesey, and Christina Womble, who runs our case and health, and I'm missing somebody, Becky Wyatt also, who helps with case and health classes as well. The wellness department's fantastic. The kids all get an opportunity to get some exercise throughout their 10-day cycle. They go outside on any day that they possibly can. The teachers work together in teams to give the kids great opportunities to learn different sports and to exercise and learn about body science and how to stay healthy and fit. They do a lot of team building activities and do a lot of sort of coaching model, working with the kids and solving conflicts as they arise, usually in the context of sport. And in the health classes, I often come in, and in the wellness classes with our school resource officer and the guidance team to talk to the students about healthy relationships, conflict resolution, and skill building around how do you continue to grow in relationships with your teachers and with other peers as you go through the middle school years. Art department, also another discipline that's close to my heart as a kid who loved art class. It was one of the favorites, and I know that it is a favorite of a lot of our students too, where they go and find their home and can do some calm, creative work in the space of a sometimes frenetic academic day. We have two excellent teachers in the art department. We have Kevin Long and Kelly Celentano, who teach a variety of courses. They're all general art courses. They're not the more specific ones that you'll see up in the high school where they have very specific courses to ceramics and to 3D and 2D design. Instead, in these classes, they will work on the more broad categories of artistic expression, including exploration, observation, and self-expression, and learning the ways in which different mediums and materials can help to underscore those bigger themes and ideas. And kids can find their place with that. I know that the art department offers two different clubs after school, one that's more specific to fibers and to artistic creations in fiber, and then one that is open art studio, where kids can come after school, and if that's a passion of theirs, which it is for many of our students, they can also continue to draw on that passion after school hours. We have a robust world language program here in Westwood that starts in 7th grade, but students get to start thinking about it in 6th grade and start picking their path at the end of the 6th grade year. For instance, our 6th graders currently had presentations in their advisory classes where our foreign language department spoke about the options to take and study either French or Spanish for their 8th and 7th grade years. And students and families together chose which of those opportunities they would like to pursue for the years coming up. And it's part of a larger program that builds as they go through. So you choose at the end of your 6th grade year, and then you begin your study in 7th grade French or Spanish. And the idea is to spend as much time speaking in the target language as possible given the levels. And that's a definitive goal for the department. Oh, sorry, go one back. And as the students move up, they start to get more specific, hone their skills in French or Spanish. And then when they transition to high school, they can pick and choose whether they want to continue with one of those two core languages or actually expand it to study Latin. We also have Mandarin on offer at the high school as well. So those skills will start to get developed later on in your student's career here. Another fan favorite here is the drama department, and I know that's not on offer at all schools, so I feel like we're very lucky here to be able to offer a really robust drama department that actually puts on middle school level full-scale productions. And if you've never been to one, when you do go, you're going to be blown away by the quality of the productions. We have a drama offering for every single grade level here. And the students work through all different aspects of drama and theatrical study. And some of them are listed here: silent movies, tableaus, Greek theater. But I think the biggies for our kids and for the staff are the bigger productions that all of those smaller pieces are building towards, including the 6th grade play, the 8th and 7th grade musical, and then also a 7th grade field trip, which is based around going usually to see a dramatic production, sometimes in Providence. I think there's even been one to Boston. And those productions are high quality. A lot of kids who don't necessarily act on stage also participate in it, if it's from a chorus perspective or from helping with the set and the costumes. It's definitely a community effort. A lot of people at all the different levels come together to help those productions launch, and they're a really excellent experience for our kids. It's really a nice opportunity that they have here.
One thing that I'll add is I think there's a little bit of a disguised public speaking aspect to this course throughout the 3 years for students, and we see them become very comfortable speaking in front of groups and speaking in front of their classes when they're presenting, and they learn a lot of their skills for that here.
Absolutely. And it goes without saying, we have an extraordinary music department here at Thurston that continues on all the way up through the high school level. In fact, there's a production for the middle school going on right now. I believe it's the chorus concert that's happening concurrently. And we offer 4 different types of music courses, again, which is, sort of unique at the middle school level to be able to offer this. We have orchestra courses, which focuses on string instruments. We have the full concert band course. We have chorus for vocal practice, and then general music for students who want to just kind of do a little bit of everything and may not have decided which of those other avenues that they would like to explore. The reason we have not yet sent out that survey was to talk a little bit about this and the offerings, because I think for many families, lots of questions arise about like, hey, my kid's never played an instrument. Can they still be in the band? Or my kid's never picked up a violin. Is it possible that they could play in the orchestra? The answer to this, when I spoke with those individuals, is yes, they absolutely can. Even if they have no experience, they will find a way to help that child sort of scale up as much as possible at their level. And they're very experienced with this. They have students playing all different kinds of instruments, some of whom have had private lessons since their child was very young, others who have not. And so they will work with you. And we had an inquiry recently, I believe, a parent reached out saying, my child plays guitar. Will they have a place in this organization in one of these classes? And I believe the answer was yes, we'll find a place, we'll find a way. So don't hesitate if your kid is thinking about joining band or orchestra and haven't yet had a chance to play an instrument. They'll help you. Now's the time to do that and to explore and to get that help so that your child can learn those things before they move on. And I'll go back one more, sorry. Some of the big events for the music department, one of the ones that's coming up really soon is the Great East Festival. Kids that perform in the band are able to travel. What town is it where the Great East is? It's Western Mass. Regardless, it's to a theme park. Agawam. Yes. And they get to perform and have a whole day at a theme park and get to perform for a live audience. And it's a really exciting opportunity for them. And they also participate in multiple concerts throughout the year, which again are highly professional and wonderful experiences, usually held up at the high school. And if you haven't attended one, definitely make that on your calendar for next year.
And you may see me from time to time in a performance or two. All right, we're going to turn it over to Miss Gratian, Dee Gratian. She is Department Head of Student Services. Just to tell you a little bit about some of these things that we have going on at Thurston.
Hi, I'm Dee Gratian. I'm the Department Head of Student Services here at Thurston Middle School. We have a pretty robust Student Services department. Some of the pictures are missing, but obviously all students are able to access, and I'm sure we'll have time. Oh, there you go. Working with our nursing department, Miriam Baker. She's new to us this year, and she has been a wonderful addition. And she's taken us through the year in the testing protocol for the COVID testing, which has been great. She's very thorough and thoughtful, and she's also very kind. I think your children will really feel very supported if they end up in the nurse's office. We also have, I think we talked about the counseling and the guidance counselor, Mrs. Yim. We have obviously our counseling department. All students will have access to Mrs. Yim as our guidance counselor. And then any students who are eligible for any other student services supports like special education or ELL teachers, and then all the related services. So if your child needs speech and language therapy or occupational therapy, all those services are available through our student services department as well.
One thing I'd just like to add on here is over the past 3 years, as of next year, we will have 6 literacy and math specialists at Thurston. So there's 3 literacy, 3 math specialists. It's a student support service, but not one that requires formal IEP or qualification of services kind of process. They're available to all students. Those teachers work in our WIN block and in our throughout our core blocks to push in and support in class, as well as in the WIN block, they work to pull students and work with students in smaller groups based on data that we collect through our STAR assessments that your students are taking in elementary now. We use that data, we look at that data, and then we utilize those 6 extra literacy and support specialists to add more teacher-student support at each grade level. So it's two are assigned to each grade level, and that's been an addition over the past 3 years that has happened, more specifically in the past 2, and we are finding really great benefit to support us, especially coming out of the pandemic. Okay, one-on-one computing it's time. Okay, I have to escape?
Yeah, I'd like to offer, if you would like to stand up for 30 seconds.
Good idea.
And stretch, because we're going to get Jesse zooming in Do a little high-tech switch here. Take a nice stretch. And incidentally, I don't think this microphone does anything for audio in the room. I think it's for Westwood Media Center. I am Steve Valletta. I am Director of Technology, Learning, and Innovation, not integration, but no problem. I've got the longest title in the district. And I am joined by Dr. Jesse Murphy, who is waving to you on the screen. He is the Thurston Middle School Instructional Technology Coach. And I'm just here to talk about our one-to-one take-home Chromebook program, which starts in grade 6 and spans to grade 12, and provide you just with some information about what to expect regarding that program. So Jesse's also advancing slides for me. That's your cue, Jesse. So before I get into like the logistics, the nuts and bolts, I just wanted to put up one slide that I think frames our one-to-one program and one of the biggest benefits that I see from it. And I was a recipient of what I would call traditional instruction, where, as you can see, the teacher finds, packages, and delivers content to students. And in what I would call contemporary instruction, facilitated by digital resources, students are able to access content and learn and discover for themselves. And I really honestly believe that fosters those three things: that agency and independence, retention, and higher order thinking skills for students. So that's been kind of a holistic benefit that we've seen from the program. This is you can go back, Jesse, not quite. This is in addition to like just 24 access to resources, as you would expect, and just really efficient communication, digital communication, and that's really just helped with student to student and then student to teacher communication, and that's been a real advantage as well. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Jesse. You can switch over. This is a timeline of just I'm calling it the take-home program. So the students in elementary school have had access to digital tools, but they essentially stay in the classroom. Aside from the pandemic, of course, when they went home, but now they're back. Your child will receive a Chromebook in grade 6 when they arrive, basically during the first week of school, during homeroom. And during the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, their middle school time, they will receive an orientation to our digital resources, including the Chromebook, as well as what I call responsible use instruction. You'll hear a little bit more about that from Dr. Murphy. And we front load that. Most of what that experience happens at grade 6 for obvious reasons. When they get to grade 9, students will actually participate in a program called Freshman Seminar, where they are oriented to the high school, largely about digital resources and being a good digital citizen. But they also receive some good information about just being at the high school in general. And that's about 8 sessions in the fall. And that's a really good program for the freshmen. And you're probably not thinking about grade 9, but it will be here before you know it. Halfway through grade 9, students, oh, by the way, the students will bring their Chromebooks that they receive in September, so they're going to take really good care of them. They will bring them to the high school, and halfway through the freshman year, they will have the opportunity to receive a new device. They're kind of on a 3.5-year refresh schedule. Or at that point, they can opt to be in what we call our BYOD program, where they can bring a personal device instead of taking a district-offered Chromebook. And I'd say about 20% of students avail themselves of that opportunity, and the others are perfectly happy with the Chromebooks. And we choose to offer it when they are at the high school, mainly just they're a little more responsible and mature, and they can handle having a device that's personal. We tend to put some safeguards in place on the Chromebooks for the younger kids so that they are not going places where they shouldn't. Okay, Jesse. So timeline and logistics. So you will receive a mailing, so you don't have to take notes. And you will receive a Chromebook loan agreement that you and your child will sign and bring with them the first week of school. And that's kind of their ticket to receive the Chromebook, a charger, and a case. And that kind of hits with the first week of school. So that's how the distribution will be handled. You will also receive an email from me about insurance and something called the Deladeo Parent Portal, and I'll talk about that right now. Go ahead, Jesse. So, optional insurance. So there's two types of things that can go wrong with Chromebooks. There's the manufacturer defect on the left, which is something that's not the fault of the child. It's, you know, maybe the battery stops holding a charge or whatever. We've got that covered. We have a extended warranty on all these devices. You have nothing to worry about there. I've been told middle schoolers can be hard on devices. That's what they tell me. So we do offer accidental insurance. So if there is a drop, a spill, a cracked screen, you will receive an opportunity, an email from me to register for insurance for damage. And it's $30 a year. It's not a requirement. I have 3 boys. They went through the Westwood schools. They, you know, they were hard on their devices. I was always the first person that bought the insurance every year. So I highly recommend you consider doing that. And it's 0 deductibles, unlimited claims, and between the two, you'll be fully covered. You'd have the peace of mind knowing that your child will have a reliable working device at all times. Okay, Jesse? Deladeo is our filtering tool. So the Chromebook will have a filter that does a number of things. It will, and I promise you, it will make sure that your child does not get to objectionable, harmful sites. And it works on campus and off campus. It'll work at your home, it'll work at Dunkin' Donuts, it'll work everywhere. And we take that seriously, and you can rest assured that those safeguards are in place. We also tend to kind of lock down sites that are more distracting. And you know, we want students to know that this device is for schoolwork. They have plenty of access to other devices for non-school work. So they will see that. They will perceive the Chromebook as a place where they get work done. And so that filter accommodates that as well. You will receive an email from me mid-August inviting you to sign up to the Deladeo Parent Portal. If you choose to do that, optional. And by the way, if you have older children that are already in the 1-1 program, you can sign up for them as well. You may have already received an email. You may already be part of this program. But if you sign up for the Parent Portal, you'll receive weekly browsing history reports on where your child has been. And you will have the option to add additional restrictions to where they're going at home. So if there's a site that you just are addicted to and they can't get off it, and you know it's like getting in the way of actually getting work done, you will be able to block that site. So you can make it more restrictive. You can't make it less restrictive, but you can make it more restrictive. And that's totally up to you if you decide you want to do that. I think this is a good segue to Jesse, because this is kind of in the responsible use realm. And Jesse has a little bit more to talk about with regard to responsible use.
Thank you, Steve. How's my volume?
Perfect.
All right, awesome. Thank you. And I am just across the hall in my office. And so I apologize for not being able to be in the room. But on the plus side, as the technology person at a middle school, this is the longest I've ever sat at my desk without interruption. So that's very good. So like Steve said, I'm just going to pick up with responsible use where he left off with being focused. One of the big themes the first couple months of school in 6th grade is that these Chromebooks are meant to be only used for schoolwork, which a few students take a little longer to learn than others, but they all get there. But that's one of our focuses for the year. The second thing, and I'll talk about these last couple a little bit more in a second, but we talk a lot with students at the beginning of the year about being protective of their Chromebooks, taking as good a care of them as possible. And finally, just about being healthy, what it means to stay balanced with technology and screens. And of course, the most important one, staying safe online. So to pick up with protective, we go through these slides with kids, so I won't bore you with them, but just the idea of taking care of it. We see a lot of cracked screens, a lot of keys that fly off the keyboard. So just being as careful as they can, keeping their Chromebook in the cases. And of course, as much as you guys can help out with that, we always appreciate parents who try to get their kids to use the cases as well. And then finally, one of the biggest habits they need to get into is charging their Chromebooks every night and then remembering to put them in their backpacks in the morning. And one of the habits that we see of the most successful kids with that is just having a place to charge it. It can be a fancy station like one of these, or it can just be a place where every night the student knows, go plug it in, and every morning unplug it and put it in your backpack. So just in terms of taking care of your Chromebook, those are a few of the basic things we talk with kids about. Some just the beginning of the year, some all year long. That charging station, ideally not in the bedroom, but mostly I throw this segue slide in to talk about the third thing, which is being healthy with technology. And so we do have kids. We've had kids come to school several mornings in a row, exhausted, before someone finally realizes, yep, they're staying up all night watching YouTube on their Chromebook. So we try to talk to kids a lot about staying balanced with your screens and being safe. Steve mentioned earlier a lot of the places in their career in Westwood that they'll have this training, and we do a lot of it in 6th grade, both in health and wellness, and then of course in advisory sessions. This is actually the perfect time for us to talk about this, because last week and this week we've been focusing almost entirely on these topics. Last week we spent a couple days in advisory talking about online chatting, everything from text messages to group chats and social media comments, and just talking about how much is too much. And then if you're not up on all of the kids' acronyms, IBF is my internet best friend, and that's someone that I chat with a lot online, but who I've never met in person. And so we talk about what are the risks of having IBFs and what precautions can you take to make sure that you're not giving out the wrong kind of information or setting up meeting with people who you've never met. So that was all last week. We talked about that. This week, just this morning, we talked about digital drama. And so we've talked this week about the benefits and drawbacks of social media, how to deal with digital drama, how to remove yourself from digital drama. And in that curriculum has, you can see at the bottom there, it has all sorts of activities and discussion topics in it, and a lot of videos that are actually much better now than they were 4 or 5 years ago. They were tough to watch, but they're getting better and better. People are catching up with these content areas. And then the very last thing that I'm going to tell you about is really more of a nuts and bolts thing. Most of the teachers at the middle school, especially in 6th grade, do use Google Classroom quite a bit. And we never know which elementary teachers use it and which parents are very familiar with it. But just in case you're not familiar with it, come to fall, Google Classroom is where you'll see almost all of the daily assignments and activities in a lot of classes, where teachers are posting what the kids are doing and what the homework is. Grades in that program are posted more frequently. And then you have the option of keeping the Google Guardian summary emails, or you can remove that if you're not as excited to get those weekly emails. And mostly we put that up against Aspen, which is another place where you might find grades, but they're usually less frequent in Aspen. But that's where you'll of course go for report cards and progress reports, which I think you're probably already doing. And that is it. If you have any questions, I'm not sure why Steve didn't put my email address on here, but I'm okay with that. Just email Steve if you have any questions.
We'll fix it.
Jump in quickly to some handbook highlights. Obviously encourage you to please read over the handbook when it's distributed to you, and also just review it with your child too. One of the things that I just want to talk about is drop off and pick up real quick, because it can be a little bit confusing. How many current parents are in the room of students or had students? It could be a little tricky. So in the front of the building, on this side is our bus loop. In the mornings during pickup and dismissal, we do not want to see any cars coming down the bus loop. All of our drop off and pick up by cars is in the back here by the fields. It loops around, and then you have to make a left. So that's the design. Sometimes it prevents, it creates a little congestion. Just be patient. We have students crossing. We'll send out something just as a reminder, but it can be tricky, and we just want everyone to be safe, so we ask that you just take your time during that process. Rainy days, those tend to back the line up, so don't worry. If we see a long line, we delay attendance. But just to know, please stay out of that bus lane until I think it's like 45 minutes after the buses have departed. The time is up. I wanted to talk about cell phones a little bit. So in our handbook, cell phones are not permitted. Students are to have them turned off and away. Students have them. If they're caught with them out, we confiscate them. And most of the time, we know that we ask that parents come and pick them up. That's inconvenient to you, so we ask that your child try to abide by that. I also want to talk about this for a minute because it has become more and more of a problem for us. And it really requires your partnership with us, because they're getting their phones, and their phones are being used in not always the most appropriate ways. They're causing a significant increase in social issues, and most of our disciplinary issues have a cell phone connected to it. Either a conversation started on the weekend or outside of school, or students are using some of the social media platforms that they shouldn't be on because they don't meet the age limits, like Instagram, Snapchat, and things are happening a lot more these days than they had happened 8 years ago, 10 years ago when I started in a middle school. So I would say, Mrs. Haberman will agree, there is a significant rise in the connection of cell phones to disciplinary issues. And sadly, some of those disciplinary issues are becoming even more serious than beyond school discipline. And some of the things that you've heard about in communications throughout the district have primarily been because of a cell phone. And so I just want to take a minute to talk about them and ask for your partnership. Some parents have opted to give their students the flip phone that isn't smart, doesn't have the access to the internet. And in talking with those parents, they really, I think that's been a game changer for them. It's your decision ultimately, but just understand that it's created, especially in our middle school and in all. I talk to a lot of principals in other schools. It's a continuous problem, and it's becoming more and more complicated. And students are we'll teach them, we'll coach them, we'll work with them on the ways to use it appropriately, but sometimes the temptation is too great to say something or to do something, and then it comes into school. So once it's in school, it's become our problem, and we have to intervene. And we'd like not to do that. It prevents us from doing the things that we like the most, which is getting into the classrooms and being with the kids when we're stuck investigating or looking into something that's had a negative impact on others. So I just, it's kind of a really solemn, serious kind of tone that I'm taking right now, because I'm really pleading with all of you to take that really seriously and think about that and talk about the expectations around cell phone use with your children, because we don't want to have those situations happening at Thurston. And they have a Chromebook. They have access to technology in the way that we need them to have it here. Dress code, students we just ask that they make sure that they're dressed relatively appropriately, that they're not wearing anything distracting, that it's appropriate. You know, I think they all understand it's no different than what they've grown up doing in elementary school. We allow hats. We are discouraging and putting a no on the hoods being up during the day for hoodies. We had a lot of hoodies up this year. We allowed that to happen when the windows were open and it was like below 10. We're not doing that anymore. We have a lot of students who are wearing the hoods and hiding their AirPods, so next year that's going to be a change. So they may have heard they could have their hoods up, but they're going to be asked to take them down. But they can wear their hats. And then finally, I'm going to ask Mrs. Haberman to just talk a little bit about just behavior, bullying, and harassment, because when those things come, sometimes related, most of the time related to a cell phone, Mrs. Haberman's the one doing those investigations.
Close to 100, I bet.
I did quite an extensive survey, and it is over 90% of sixth graders have one. And by the time they're in eighth grade, it's basically about 100%. Yes, so when your child says everyone else has one, they kind of mean it.
So I get the great privilege. Of having this fun bullet point tonight. A big part of my job is working with middle schoolers around, decision making. And sometimes because they're in middle school for all of the same reasons that we talked about at the start of this, it's an awkward time. They're learning, they're just managing social relationships, their hormones are surging and changing, their bodies are changing, and all kinds of things are happening. This tends to be a thing that happens for kids, and chances are at some point I might be giving a call home to you to connect on that. And what I want to say is I always have that little moment of anxiety when I call, because I don't want to make the call as much as you don't want to receive it, I promise. And what I would like to say is that my goal, and I understand kids make mistakes, and I know that you do too as parents. I have kids of my own, and my job is to help those kids and to learn and to take responsibility and accountability, to own up to their part in whatever the problem has surfaced, and hopefully to mend relationships. I think that's a big part of the learning of middle school, is learning how to move beyond an incident that's come up and still be able to coexist in a space where you have to see that person again, probably tomorrow, maybe multiple times a day. And we do a lot of that work together with the guidance team and with the teachers and with other support staff in the building with your child. And our first line of defense is usually to have a conversation. And we try to do that work one-on-one with kids, build rapport and relationships. But sometimes things leap up over that, and we might have to go to a different place with it. The B word is one that scares parents because nobody wants that label applied to their child on either side. You don't want to have the kid who's experienced it, and you certainly don't want to have the kid who's doing it. And unfortunately, at some point, most kids are somewhere in there at least once and have to learn, sort of how to get out of that situation. And they usually rely on the adults to help them with that. And so I would say that sometimes these things come up. In Massachusetts, we take it very seriously, because we want to ensure that all students can come to school and feel like they can access their academics without feeling that sense of anxiety that something's going to come up. And we also want to teach kids what behaviors may not be funny, and they're just starting to learn what things aren't jokes, and what things aren't landing well, and when they're running up against something that's making somebody feel uncomfortable. And sometimes it's between two friends that have been long-term friends and things are going sideways. And I will say, to Mike's point earlier about the cell phones, this and cell phones are almost married together in my experience, because that's where some of the really inappropriate language and comments start flying, because kids don't feel the same sense of accountability to somebody as they do when they're face to face. They don't say things to their peers and to their friends to their face that they can say online, and that presents a real challenge for us. So as you start helping your child transition to the middle school years, having some of those healthy conversations about the importance of what they say and do online is really important. Almost weekly, I receive a series of screenshots of something wildly inappropriate that a student has said or done. And I know they're kids and they're making mistakes, and that's okay. And they're always shocked to know that Mrs. Haberman has their screenshot of that terrible conversation. They're like, the look of fear. And I'm like, are your mom and dad going to like it when I talk to them about this? And the panic sets in. And the reality is, it's really usually here in these years where the kids know and understand that, oh boy, if the principal has that screenshot, anybody can have that screenshot. And that's part of the work that we do too, where we say, hey, listen, 8th grader, you're going to be in high school soon, and college is around the corner, and you don't want these things floating around, and you need to be really wise about what you say and do online. And that's a lot of the work that I do in my office with kids and with families to try and mitigate some of that. So all of the pre-work that you can do this summer to talk to your kids about that is going to help them, because that's where most of the issues lie these days. Kids don't tend as much anymore to say it to their faces because they're generally good kids and they're intimidated to do that. But they do things online that you would not expect and say things you wouldn't expect. And that can sometimes lean into harassment too. And I work on those issues. They're uncomfortable, but we have to do it. We have to protect kids and ask for your partnership. If I do have to give you a call, know that I have all kids' best interests at heart. And sometimes I have to have those difficult conversations, and I'm comfortable having them, and I will work with your child to let them know directly. I usually look right in the kid's eyes at the end of an incident and say, we're going to move past this, buddy. It's going to be okay. We made a mistake, and tomorrow's a new day, and I'm going to see you in the hallway, and we're going to move on. It's going to be great. And that's part of middle school too. And I'll partner with you all the way through. And I know Mr. Walker feels the same way, that we know that kids are going to grow and change and make mistakes. And we seek your partnership in helping them to do that successfully.
Our team leaders would like to.
We're going to be so quick, I promise. So one of the major differences between 5th grade and 6th grade is that in 5th grade, your child has one teacher, and you probably always know who to contact. And in 6th grade, your child has lots of teachers. And so Lisa and I, as your team leaders, we are your point people. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us along the way with any questions or concerns, no matter how big or small they may seem. Reach out to us, and if we don't have the answers, we'll point you in the right direction.
We also wanted to let you know that we know there are a lot of jitters, a lot of excitement, but a lot of jitters for the kids. We're excited to meet them in a few weeks. They're going to come up, they'll see the cafeteria, they'll see our classrooms, they'll meet some teachers. That's a great introduction. But then in September, we promise we're going to take good care of them. We'll walk them through everything the first couple of days. We'll do the lockers over and over and over again until they get it, and everybody gets it. So please reach out anytime. We're super excited to see them. They're going to be okay.
And they all come back the second day.
They do.
Thank you. So we have some after-school clubs and activities that take place at Thurston. They're Tuesdays and Thursdays. They go from right after school to about 3:25, 3:30. We have buses, late buses, that go to designated locations. They're not the same stops as assigned buses if you were to take them every day, but they're general locations, and they're usually pretty close. We have some. Over the years, we've had some sample offerings, but we're also just open to what students are interested in doing, and we try to find an academic advisor to support that club or activity. We've also had some high schoolers come down and work with adults in the building to offer choices for students in different areas as well. Oh, Mr. Roulette, I'm stuck. Yeah, all right. I'm going to just go the old way. Okay, let's see. Nope. Oh, there we go. Okay, middle school sports. So we have some sports. You should see those sign-ups available. They're on the website. Certain ones are for certain grades only, and then others are open to all grade levels. That everything is run through the athletic department. Mr. Gillis is in charge of those things. Some people often think that we have a lot of the planning that goes along with that. We don't. It's Mr. Gillis. So if you have any questions about sports, please direct them to him. I'm doing it again, Mr. Roulette. All right. One of the things that I wanted to bring up tonight is this is historically where the MECO program has started, and I know we have some families in the room tonight who will be new to Westwood, and we welcome you. we're also excited that the expansion is taking place and that our METCO program will be starting in kindergarten through 5th grade. And there's some ways to get involved. There's a welcome club. There's some opportunities there to meet families and also volunteer. And it's just, it's a program that has been in Thurston since 1968. And we're really proud of it. And we're excited to welcome all of our new families as well. All right, summer reading, summer math. Would you like to jump on? Okay.
So folks, I'll just briefly preview for you the summer reading. You'll receive a whole lot more information about this. Everything will be written down and spelled out for you. But just to give you a real quick preview, we are asking our rising 6th graders to read 2 books this summer. The first book is a shared common text across the grade level. It's Lifeboat 12 by Susan Hood. It's the story, a true story, of a boy named Ken who is living in London during the time of the bombings in World War II. And in order to get to safety, he's part of a program that sends children from London overseas to safety. I won't give anything away, but something happens and they end up in a lifeboat and they're fighting for their survival. It's a thrilling tale. I highly recommend the audiobook. The second text is a choice, is a text entirely of your students' choosing. We partnered with the Westwood Public Library to curate a list of middle school texts organized by different topics and genre. So your child is welcome to use that as a starting point of a text they might want to read. But if they've got something else they're interested in, that's totally fine. The goal is for them to find something they love to read and spend a summer day that way.
And for math?
For math, you have a choice of IXL, which all the students have access to right now. They have their own accounts. And so we're asking for 1 to 2 hours a week, give or take, on IXL using, following the scripted questions that are offered to them. But for those of you that are maybe sending your kids away to camp or that just want to reduce the screen time, we offer a number of sort of pencil to paper workbooks, or any combination of that. We just want to keep their minds going. We want to keep their math facts going. We want to keep the practice going over the summer so that when they come in 6th grade, they're prepared to continue the learning and pick up from 5th grade.
So I'd like to just take a minute to introduce the president, or soon to be co-president, once a new, if there is one yet. Pam Snatterly is one of the co-presidents, co-chairs of the PTO, and she's just going to say a quick word.
Just quick. Hello, everybody. As Mike said, I'm Pam Schnatterly, the co-chair of the PTO. So yes, I know you have them in the middle schools. We have it here too in, the elementary schools. We have it here too in the middle school. When I started 2 years ago, I think there were only 2 or 3 parents involved in the PTO, and we've grown to about 20. And we'd love to grow it more. So if you're interested in getting involved, outside on one of the tables, there's a QR code for our Facebook page. That's one way to start getting connected. In the fall, you will hear from us. We collect dues, just like the elementary schools do as well. So we will ask for dues. That goes towards putting a dent in what we pay for the school. We do quite a bit with teacher appreciation, a lot of student enrichment programs. Like, for example, we purchased a whole bunch of recess equipment for the students for recess. We support like the 7th grade writers conference, buying every child a book. There's a number of things that we do that you can get involved in. Our executive board, we are 2 co-chairs and a treasurer and a secretary. Because of some people moving on, we have an open secretary position for anybody who wants to jump on the executive board. You are welcome. But we have a number of other committees that we are welcoming people to volunteer for, lots of volunteer opportunities. In the fall, something that we are planning to do is which we haven't done before, is to hold a parent social. Considering that you're all coming from 5 different elementary schools, it might be a really nice opportunity for you to connect with parents that you don't know yet. So that's something new, and so be on the lookout for that. I think those are the main points, so I can get you all out of here. That's it. pay your dues, volunteer your time, and donate money when we ask for it. Thank you.
And then we also have a few members from the CPAC as well. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Steph Feingold. I am one of the co-presidents, along with Kerry, of CPAC, which is the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. I'm so glad I remembered that without having to look. We're a volunteer organization of parents and who are receiving special education services, and parents who might be out of district or have children on with a diagnosis. And we advocate for parents and kids with special needs. And if you're interested in learning more about it, I'm going to pass it on to Carrie in a second, but we have a flyer outside on the PTO table because we don't want to take too much of your time. And our website is westwoodcpac.org.
And I'm Carrie Aglagub. I'm also co-chair, but I'm also the 6th grade CPAC liaison for next year. So all the schools in the district have CPAC liaisons. We're lucky at the middle school to be well supported with a liaison in every grade. If you want to connect with our network of parents and join in our events, we left our flyer too with a QR code that links to our website, and we have a Facebook page. So please reach out. Thank you.
Okay, and just to let you know, we have a couple of upcoming transition dates just to make you aware of. Between May 31st and June 9th, Mrs. Haberman and some school staff will be visiting each elementary school to see students and introduce themselves and talk a little bit to them. On June 15th, all of the 5th grade students will be coming to Thurston and are invited. We have a schedule for the day for them. They'll have lunch here. They'll meet me and some of the other teachers, talk about some of our cafeteria expectations while we're here, just to get a jump start on that. And then we will send them back to their schools, hopefully reducing some of that anxiety going into the summer. And then towards the end of August, we'll send out some information. You'll get information in August about school supply lists, which are very minimal because we're really most of the time like very much on our Chromebooks and things like that now. There'll be some small things, and usually students have plenty of time over the first few weeks of school to gather those. But we also have a day where we invite families into the building. We have some test lockers set up so students can practice how to use the locker combinations. They'll get a new combo. But we have some ones out for practice. And then we also open the building up so they can walk their schedules and sort of see where their classes are so they know where they're going on the first day of school. And that's it. So we did pretty good. If we had some quicker participation in the beginning, I think it would have been just about there. But I just hope, the goal of tonight is for you to see us and to meet us, get to know us a little bit, get some information which maybe you will hold on to like a piece of it, and understand that we're really passionate about working with middle school students. We all have a story about why we maybe ended up here or why we do this work. I love middle school. I have been in it since I graduated from college, and that's where I plan on staying for the rest of my career if it allows it. I think this is every day's different. Students in this, as Mrs. Haberman said, it's an optimal time to learn. They make mistakes. It's okay. We're here to support them. We're here to make sure that things go smoothly. So we just ask for your partnership over the next 3 years and hope that you have a successful journey with them, with us. And thanks for coming tonight.